Alright, we will talk about what kind of link types are exist. We use the link for modeling of associations, hierarchies, and redefinitions of business terms and transactions. Standard links are used to model associations or relationships, and hierarchical links for hierarchies, and same as links for redefinitions of business terms. And we also use the non-historized links for modeling transactions, but we can consider transactions a little bit separate because there's a big debate how to model it between the modelers, so we will discuss all modeling recommendations later on. Before move on, let's shortly remember the main characteristics of a standard link. So the link represents the unique business key relationships in Data Vault model, so it does not include any descriptive data. And the main fields contained in a link table is the hash key columns from the relevant hub tables, and the record source that shows the origin of the data, and the load date that captures the first time this relationship was seen in the data warehouse. And lastly, the hash key column is a unique identifier of the table, which is calculated based on the business key values from the hubs. On the other hand, links capture the relationships between the data elements which took place in the past, present, and the future. You may think about that if we look at the relationships in different time intervals, then we may need a time definition in the link table that shows us the validity of the relationships with the time intervals like start date and the end date in the link. But in this approach, we limit the relationship into the time intervals, and even it is true today, the business logic of organization may change in the future, and as we know that the main idea of the data vault is the flexibility and adaptability to the changes. Therefore, we don't use end date or start date information in the link tables. We have other methods to track the validity of the relationships, and we will handle them in the following sessions, but first get an understanding what is the relationship or what is transaction and how we can differentiate them from each other. So first think about the relationship, in other words the associations. So links in the data vault modeling are used to model relationship between the entities. Entities like the persons, places, things, or events. For example, interaction between a customer and a customer group or between region and city are all the samples of the relationships. And you may remember that the main identification mostly helps us to find relationship is the primary key, foreign key relationship between the tables. So now look at the scenario. As a customer, we visit the MediaMarkt and would like to buy a tablet. And result of this action, we have a couple of tables in organization's database that holds the relevant information about this event. There is a customer table that contains the descriptive information of a customer like telephone or the name or address. Then there is a customer type table that includes the category of the customer like private or business customer. And we have product table that include the product information and sales table that gives us the detailed information about the sales as which product is sold to whom or when the sales take place or etc. So it is a typical 3NF form data model as entities join each other, and we have a sales table that includes the many-to-many relationship between customer and product and act as a like bridge table and also include the transaction details. So when we look at the interaction between customer and customer type, we clearly see that there is a relationship or associations between them based on the primary key and the foreign key relationship. Customer type is a parent table in here and customer is a child, which means that in a single customer type like private, there will be multiple customers. So we obviously need a standard link between these two entities. We have hub tables for both entities of customer and customer type, and a link table that provides relationship between them, and we included the business key columns into the hub tables as customer ID and customer type ID, and we embedded the hash key columns from the hubs into the link table as a foreign key. And we created its own primary key column for the link table as a hash-based. Then we also include the record source and the load date columns as well. But when we look at the right side, the relationship between customer and sales, are we able to simply define a relationship between them? So the answer is a little bit different. So for relationships, we need to connect different entities. And when we look at the sales table, it seems as a like weak entity. So it is an event that occurs between the interaction of customer and product. Like when customer buys a product, then the sales happens. So without customer or product information, sales itself does not have any meaning or represent any business concepts alone. So it's a weak entity in here. And when considering links in Data Vault modeling, it is very important to distinguish the relationship and transactions between each other. So we can clearly tell that different from the relationship between customer and customer type, we have a sales transaction take place between customer and product. For example, sales, order, cancellation are typical transactions mostly take place in the organizations. So we already use standard link tables for associations or relationships and need a different modeling aspect for transactions. But it's a more controversial topic that includes different modeling options that we will discuss it later on.